For this video, we are going to be plugging in the flight controller. So here is the top of the flight controller, if it'll focus. And if you flip it over, here's the bottom. The first thing we're going to be plugging in is the power module. So here I already plugged in the GH 1.25 connector, but for future reference, to unplug the ports, you press down on this tab and you pull out. So you plug it back in, and on the back of the power module, across from the micro SD port, you'll see power in very small writing. You're gonna plug in the GH 1.25 connector into the 6-port power port. Once you have that plugged in, you're gonna take the assembly that you built, and on the soldered plate, you're going to take the power cord and plug it in to the power module. Later on, when you're ready to fly the quadcopter, you're going to plug the battery into the power module. For our battery, we need an adapter. So just to be ready to plug in the battery, I'm going to plug in our adapter. You can have an assortment of batteries, and there's different adapters that you can get, but for us we have this one, and you just plug it in like anything else, and you've successfully plugged in the power module. Now that you've successfully plugged in the power module, it's time to plug in your already bound receiver. For this step, you need to take the UART to S port adapter. Here we have a whole bunch of different adapters, but as long as you have the UART adapter to the S port adapter, you'll be fine. So for plugging in the X8R receiver, you want to find the S bus on the receiver, and in the 1, 2, 3 port, 4 prongs down, you're going to see a little rectangular area, and you just plug in the UART port into the receiver. I'm going to unplug the power module from the flight controller so you can see it easier, but to plug in the receiver, you're gonna see the RC port. It's really hard to see, but it's right across from these prongs in this small area. And to plug it in, you just simply put it in, and you have successfully plugged in your receiver. Now we're going to be plugging in the ESCs. I unplugged the power module in the receiver to make it easier for you to see when I plug it in. But to plug in the ESCs, you're going to want to take the number 2 motor, and on the back of the flight controller, you'll see 1, 2, 3, 4 on these prongs. You're going to want to take, let's use number 1 motor. Take the number 1 port and plug it into the number 1 prong. And then for the number 2 motor, you're going to want to plug into the number 2 prongs, and so forth. the flight controller, the top of the flight controller, and in between the RC and the telemetry 2 port, you'll see a little arrow. It's across the ESC prongs, and it's a very, very small arrow, but you want to point that arrow towards the established front of the quadcopter. So here, you'll be able to see how we positioned ours with everything plugged in. For us, we Velcroed down the flight controller and we Velcroed down the receiver. As long as you put it down on one of the plates, either the top plate or the bottom plate, it doesn't matter, as long as it's the flight controller itself is in the center and attached. The receiver doesn't have to be in the center, but it needs to be attached. And now you have successfully plugged in the flight controller.